is my dear honor and pleasure, I should say privilege, to introduce who has now become a dear friend, Rami Sherman. As many of you know, once we bring down a speaker, I put the word out on the forum, and then it ends up turning into a whole tour. So Rami is here now in total for a full month, doing speeches around Southern California, and then in Canada, and then back in Northern California, and San Diego in between, you know, all sorts of talks. So over the time, we've gotten to know each other quite well.
Very well.
He landed a week ago. Yes. He hasn't missed a day of tefillin since. And today, on behalf of a number of the Chabad rabbis that are hosting him here over the course of his tour, it was our honor to present him with a gift, his very own pair of tefillin, along with his own pair of tzitzit. Yes. That he'll give back with him, that hopefully he'll put on every day in Toronto and in Vancouver, and then, yeah. These tefillin will travel all over the world, you know, when somebody does this kind of a job.
And became a rabbi already.
Yes.
Start to call me, you are a rabbi without any exam.
How did you do it? How did you do it?
That's the secret.
That's the secret. You're holding that tight. So on a serious note, allow me to introduce Rami. Rami is the son of Holocaust survivors. Both of his parents survived the war. One of them in Buchenwald, your father in Buchenwald, right?
Yes.
And your mother in Auschwitz?
No. East part of Poland.
Okay.
Today it's part of Ukraine.
And they obviously made it immediately after the war to the land of Israel, and were part of the Chalutzim, the pioneers that helped to put together the land. And Rami came around shortly thereafter, we'll soon hear the whole story, and grew up on a kibbutz. And little did he know that just a number of years later, he would take a very, very historic flight, over 4,000 kilometers, if I remember correctly, more or less, across multiple countries to go and save over 100 Jews from captivity in Entebbe, Uganda. Their story, I believe most of you are familiar with. If you're not, or some of the details are hazy, Rami's going to go through them. But I want to introduce Rami probably with what has become, since the 40th anniversary of Entebbe, and Rami's been doing a lot of speeches since, but has become really Rami's, the line that Rami is famous for, which he says, I flew to Entebbe, you'll correct me if I get it wrong. He says, I flew to Entebbe as an Israeli. Remember, he grew up as a secular Israeli on a kibbutznik. We'll soon hear all the details. I flew to Entebbe as an Israeli, and I came back as a Jew.
But
they'll have to wait to hear about that.
Okay.
All right. So without further ado, a dear friend, a wonderful storyteller, Rami Sherman. So Rami, why don't you get us started at the beginning? I shared some of the slight details from your upbringing, but why don't you get us started at the beginning, your earliest memories growing up in Israel before you joined the army?
So I'm born in the kibbutz up north of Israel, the beautiful valley. Probably many of you were there, Achula Valley. On the front there was Hermon Mountain. On one side of the valley, Kiryat Shmona, and born 500 meters from the Syrian border. Why I mention that? Because two things. First, without the kippah, nothing could be. Okay.
There we go. So why do you mention the Syrian border?
The ideology of the communism in which the kibbutz was part of it, Shomer Tza'ir might be, you know the name, decided that we should go in a children's house, and not with the parents, but to live in a children's house while almost every month, like sometime twice a week, Syrians shoot it into the kibbutz. It's quite strange situation. I couldn't understand my parents and other parents, of course, how they accepted, but I grew up in such a feeling, an atmosphere. We are independent, we take responsibility on our life, but at the same time, shooting into the kibbutz was part of my biography. You know, if there's shooting, I should hide behind the house. It's not a normal life, of course, but that was the atmosphere in which I grew up till 72 when I joined the army.
When you say you're growing up, this is the 50s, 60s.
Yes, I was born in 53, was the beginning of the country. Everyone knows the history of the country. It was a difficult life, but what I remember, a very warm and happy daily life. I'm not saying that I suffer or feel something bad in such a situation. Now, when I grow up and people ask me, could you see your daughters live in such a system? I said, no, of course not. But maybe it's a part of the life. One aspect of that life was, now we are in a revolution period. In two aspects. We created a new state, the Zionist movement, ideology, but another revolution was we are not accept the Jews who are going every day to the synagogue and pray. We are taking gun and cultivate the ground and create a state. And I remember my childhood when I grew up, and in many cases, the word Jewish people, Judaism, immediately awake a negativity against it. We weren't allowed to celebrate Bar Mitzvah. The rabbi wasn't allowed to cross the gate of the kibbutz. If someone married, he went to the next town, Kiryat Shmona, just to make all the wedding business, that's all. But the party was out of any Jewish tradition way. Not at all. At Yom Kippur, we went specifically to show that we are free people, and we had a beautiful feast with pork. That means we are free. We want to show to ourselves that we are not as old people, old Jews over there in Europe.
On the wall of your house, you had a picture of the Lubavitcher Rebbe?
Of course, other Rebbe. Stalin was on a dining room hall. So that was the Rebbe.
So communism and socialism was the only religion you grew up with?
That's right.
So what was your, if you don't remember, but growing up, when you would hear about Jews who live in the United States, who live in Europe, how were you brought up? What was your relationship with them?
I hardly have any kind of known something about the Jews abroad, in Europe, in the States, of course. I never visited before I went out from Israel for give lectures. I thought we are Israeli and we live here in Israel and we create our life, a beautiful life, and that's all. And there is Jews, I know there is the Jews, but it's their difficult problem, whatever I call, they live away from Israel. Might be one day they will arrive to Israel, but that's all. I remember when I was at the end of my army service, 3 weeks after, what? It's so difficult to be a Jew.
You got it. Okay. All right.
So I want to just...
So where were we?
So I I flew down to Melbourne, Australia, because I had a family there. My father's sister lived there. And the first Friday night, she wanted to give me all the honor to pray for Shabbat dinner. And I looked at her and I said, sorry, I don't know what to do with it. I never celebrate or pray or did something connect to all the tradition, which for you it's normal. Everyone do a bit of that, a bit of that. All the Yiddishkeit, it's part of life. And I go totally different.
So let's fast forward. How old were you when you joined? Obviously, this is past 1967, the Six-Day War. You were still not in the army. When did you join the Tzaba?
At the age of 19, I joined the army, and I was chosen to be in the most elite unit of Israeli Air Force, Sayoret Matkal. Today we can use the word. At 70, we shouldn't say even the word where we serve. It was a secret unit. The majority of the activity of the unit, it's a secret unit. We crossed the border secretly, we were back to Israel secretly, and nobody should know anything about our activity.
So this happened immediately? You joined the army in 72, 1972, and immediately they recruited you for Sayeret Matkal.
Yes.
Now, Sayeret Matkal, you can't apply. You have to be chosen.
Yes.
Is this true? So tell me about the day that you heard that you were going to be serving in Sayeret Matkal. To you, was this special? Was it a privilege? Was it a surprise?
The 70, the way that people could join the army, the unit, was by friend who already served there. And if a friend said, okay, this guy is a good guy to join us, then they ask an interview, and if I pass the interview, they said, okay. Today it's totally different. Today people from the city, from a small town, Orthodox people. At the time when I was in Sayeret Matkal, hardly was someone with a kippah. Mostly kibbutznikim, young people from the Moshav, Tel Aviv, and so on.
And from 1972 until 1976, were there any interesting missions that you did that you can share with us? Before we get to the big one?
One of the most things which influenced me was 73 war. To be in Israel during the war, when you feel that it happened in Yom Kippur. Of course, we drove back home late Friday evening just to visit the family. And then, in the middle of the Yom Kippur, we called to be back to the unit. But the surprise, compared to what the High General talked and said, that we can sweep the Arab like dirty on the floor, was terrible, different. To see the next day, we drove up to the Golan Heights, and many Israeli soldiers walked down, escaped from the front, and we drove into the front. It was very close to my home, the kibbutz where I was born, and I thought to myself, it that mean I defend my home, not my country. It was physically, I thought to myself, I defend my home. And to see many Israeli soldiers killed wasn't easy. And it influenced me. And a week after, we went down to Sinai and we fought against the Egyptian soldiers. And since then, one thing I took mostly regularly, every year in Yom Kippur, I fast. I don't know why I decided it wasn't something to say a big word about being Jew or so on. It was something that I felt just by luck we survived in Israel.
So ever since the Yom Kippur War, you fast on Yom Kippur?
Most of the yes.
Do you remember, I assume on Yom Kippur, as you were traveling, there were soldiers that were joining you that were coming from the Beit Knesset, they were coming from the shul.
From where?
Those that were joining you, you were not in the shul on Yom Kippur
War.
in 73.
No.
On the holiday of Yom
No.
Kippur, you were not in shul. But many of the soldiers who were joining you,
I don't know.
You-
It wasn't something
you
that
don't
my
remember
friend
any of this.
joined shul.
so it had nothing to do with
We
that.
were at home, but most of my friends, I'm afraid to say all my friends,
No, of course.
you know,
No, but I mean, I guess my question
they
is,
were out of being in shul.
right. I guess I'm trying to figure out what would have influenced you to start fasting on Yom Kippur.
I don't know.
It was something to do with the whole war.
The situation more, the war
Right.
situation, but nothing religious.
Okay. And then came 1976. In June, or July,
End of June.
the end of June, why don't you start, even though you weren't there, but why don't you start by telling us the story as it unfolded from the passenger's perspective?
It happened in 4th of July, 76. And 3 days after we landed in Israel, I was occupied on preparing other mission for the security of the state. And then another one, as I said, a secret mission. And then for 40 years, I never touched this story. How does it influence me personally? I knew that I took part. I knew that there is a lot of movies and stories and ego fight, who is the hero at the operation. But I was out of all of that. I was studying physiotherapy. I became a physiotherapist. And then, as 2016 arrived, we started to prepare ourselves for the 40 years anniversary of the operation. 40 years, it's quite long years. And we sat and discussed how do we, in the unit, we would like to celebrate it. And we decided to write a book. So I took Lady and I asked her if she can help me to bring my personal story as well, my part in the operation. And it took about 3 months when she took out many things from my biography, my part at the operation. And then, during the preparation for the ceremony in Uganda and in Israel was a lot. I got an invitation to the Chabad Center in Copenhagen, Denmark. And I said, for the first time, I'm going to talk in front of people. And I asked myself, why not? Let's go to Copenhagen. It's a beautiful city. Why not to visit? And then on Friday evening, 100 people sat in front of me, and I said, oh, now I'm in trouble. I'm going to talk
In English.
in English. And on my head was one sentence. And I told them, look, Winston Churchill said once, as we're getting older, we remember more clearly things that never happened. So then I felt free that I can say everything. And the next day was 80 people. And since then, for 4 years, many Jewish community, Christian community, company, security force, schools, private school, Jewish school, started to invite me to share the story about the most daring operation as people use. And slowly, I start to understand something. That story exists much strong meaning outside Israel than in Israel. And I ask you, why do you arrive to listen to the story that you know what happened? You saw the movie. Some of you bought books and read the books about the operation. What brought people on Sunday evening, to sit here and listen to the story that they know? Why? 100 people and more arrived to Northport. 100 people in Bernwood start to
Newport,
and so, all this place. 100 people in California, in Florida, in New Zealand, Australia, Far East, most of the Europe countries, Africa. What do you want? And I leave that question open, and I would like to get from you feedback. Why? What contained this story, this military event? Why it's so important? And I feel it's important. I'm not saying it is not. And then the last 2020, I was middle of the tour in Africa, and slowly, all the flight canceled because of Corona. And I was in Cape Town, in South Africa, and I said 3 or more hours in an airport, trying to find the last seat on the plane who took off from Cape Town. And I arrived to Israel. And for 3 years, I was in Israel. And this time, here, it's the first tour after 3 years. So I go 3 years, and I think I understand more meaning of the story.
So why don't we start from the beginning? An Air France flight took off at the end of June from Tel Aviv.
On the plane was 140 passengers, mostly non-Jews. For me, it's a very important point to understand that at the beginning, it wasn't an attack against Jews. Most of the passengers, they were non-Jews from different countries, mostly from France. Orthodox Jews, Israeli Jews who just left for different reasons. The most important group between the passengers was Holocaust survivors. Many Holocaust survivors from the diaspora and from Israel, they were on the plane. Each one for his reason. The captain of the flight was Captain Michel Bacos. I will mention him as we move forward. Very special man.
The flight was headed towards France.
Eton, we stop over to Paris, we stop
Paris.
over in Athens.
With a stopover in Athens. The flight from Tel Aviv to Athens was uneventful.
Yeah, it's very peaceful, everyone arranged himself. 2 hours flight, very easily. Once nice story I share with it. A couple from Israel got a present for their bar mitzvah. And the parents brought him to Tel Aviv airport, and they prepared to take the flight to Paris. And just before the door closed, the office told them that there is no seat in the plane, but there is other Air France flight from Tehran. At that time was flight from Tehran through Tel Aviv to Paris. Come in 2 hours and they will take you to Paris. But their suitcase was already on the first and original flight. As they arrived to Paris, they didn't know why there is so much rush. Everyone ran and everyone tried to understand who is on the flight. And they were on a list of people who were hijacked. And then I will say something more.
So the flight landed in Athens.
Yes.
Many of the passengers got off.
50 people, passengers.
Got off.
Yes.
And 50 new passengers came on.
Yes.
Among them,
was 4 terrorists. They flew from Singapore through Bahrain and stopped in Athens, and they took the Air France flights to Paris. They walk in at 76. It was just the beginning of thinking on the security in the airport. Wasn't really security at that year. And as they walk in with heavy bag, one lady started to shout, "They are terrorists, they are terrorists." But as usual, normal life, nobody listened to old lady. And the other said, "Come on, let's give them to sit. We would like to be on time in Paris." And they found their seat. And then at 12:30, the plane took off toward Paris. And after 15 minutes, the 2 Palestinians stood up, took their gun, and ran to the cockpit and told Michel Bacchus, "From now on, we tell you where to go, and you shouldn't talk through the communication with anyone unless we give you what to say." And to show him how serious they were, they hit it with the gun, the flight engineer who sat next to him, and he started to bleed. And the 2 leaders of the operation, 2 German, member of the Baader-Meinhof group, a terror attack which was a very strong movement in Germany at the 70s. When men and women, they took the gun, told the passengers to take the passport out. They collected all the passport first and told the passengers, "You shouldn't talk, you shouldn't move from one seat to another, you're not allowed to walk to the toilet freely, and take us seriously. If you not accept what we told you, we will shoot. Mother, hide the baby under the seat." That was the beginning of the hijacking.
how many passengers were on board?
240.
240 passengers on board. They hijacked the plane, and they had the pilot reroute the plane to head where?
For 3 hours, they were around the Mediterranean. First, because Muammar Gaddafi, the president of Libya at that time, wasn't allowed them to land in Libya. They asked the right to land in Libya, but the other terrorists who wait to them in Libya, and he said, I wouldn't like to break the good relation between French and Libya. So for 3 hours they were around the Mediterranean. We thought maybe they are facing toward Israel, so a group of soldiers from our unit wait to them in Tel Aviv airport. But after 3 hours, as they told the Libyan authorities they are going to blow up their plane, they got a right to land in Benghazi in Libya.
So let's take a moment. The plane is up in the air, about to land in Benghazi. You are in Tel Aviv. Where are you? You were serving.
On Sunday, we prepare ourselves to go down to Sinai Desert for
A different operation.
for the security of the state, and we prepare ourselves. Then on 1 o'clock the bell rang and we understood that there is a terror attack somewhere, and then we understood there is a plane who hijacked around Athens. But as the plane landed in Benghazi, we drove down to Sinai to do other things.
Back to the Sinai. In other words, this, so far as you were concerned, this had nothing to do with you.
Even the government of Israel, the only things what they announced that there is a plan, a French plan, with many Israeli Jews hijacked in Athens. That's all what the government announced, nothing more. It's the first day, Sunday, and I can say even Monday, Israel react as it's a question of French government to solve the crisis. It wasn't a question of Israel to take response on the situation.
So you were in the Sinai.
Yes.
The plane landed in Benghazi, but it wasn't there for a long time.
No, quite a long, 6 hours.
6 hours. During those 6 hours, they refueled.
First, Muammar Gaddafi wanted to stop. But then again, as they said, they're going to blow up the plane with all the hostages. Immediately they got a permission to refuel the plane, and at 9:30 at night, they took off from Benghazi toward Africa. No one knew what is the direction.
The plane is flying from Benghazi to Africa. Nobody knows where it's going to land. And when is the first time that the world learned, or let's talk about the Israeli government, learned that the flight had landed in Entebbe?
At 3 a.m. Monday morning, early morning, the plane landed in Entebbe, the international airport of Uganda. Just before they prepared to land, the terrorists announced on the speakers, "Thank you for flying Air France, hope to see you again." So that is a cynic way of terrorists. In many cases, they react like that. They don't understand that we are human beings. And everyone here and there could find himself owned by terrorists. And they are so cynic by keeping us alive or killed us. Life, it's not that important. And they play with us. And they create fear in the society. You prefer yourself to be in Paris, either London or New York, and 3 a.m. in the morning, you land in Africa. They didn't know at the beginning that they landed in Entebbe, of course. As the plane stopped, the doors opened, and immediately all the humid air, which normal in Entebbe, went into the plane with a lot of malaria mosquitoes. The toilet blocked. Nobody served them with water. Nothing. 240 people like us. They didn't know anything why, what the terrorists want. Nothing. Nobody told them.
The terrorists did not tell the passengers why they
Nothing.
were hijacked or what they wanted.
Nothing.
Why did they choose Entebbe?
It's a question. One of the reasons why they choose Entebbe probably, I'm not sure if I can answer that 100% right, but one of the reasons why they choose Entebbe because they got permission from Idi Amin to land in Entebbe. Idi Amin was the president of Uganda at that time, and in 72 he breaks a good relation with Israel and opened a good relation with Libya and Russia, USSR called at that time, and the PLO. And he gave him a right to prepare a plan. It's not a simple plan. We have to give a credit to the Wadi Haddad militia. To prepare such a plan, you need a lot of support by many people. I have to give the credit and not support the thing. But if I look at the situation, there is some logic of going 4,000 kilometers from Israel to give Israel hardly a chance to do something. And then to start an open negotiation, and very easily they thought they can take Israel on their knee, and they can ask almost everything.
What were they asking?
The next day, all the situation changed. Tuesday. On Tuesday morning, 2 Ugandan soldiers arrived to the hall where all the hostages took at Monday afternoon.
So far, they took all the passengers off.
To the
They brought them in one of the terminals.
one hall in a terminal, in an old terminal.
All the passengers together.
Yes,
But the next morning, everything changed.
yes. 2 Ugandan soldiers arrived and they smashed a small hole in the wall and they went out. And then at 10 o'clock, the 4 original terrorists arrived and told them what they asked from the 2 governments, the French and the Israeli government. And look how simple thing they asked at 76. Of course, it wasn't simple thing, but in some way I can say simple because the year ahead they ask more and more all the time. They asked for releasing of 53 what they call freedom fighters. We call them terrorists. 40 from Israel and 13 from other countries, Germany, Switzerland, and Italy. Only 53. In 2011, Israel released more than 1,000 terrorists, many of them with blood on their hands, for one soldier, Gilad Shalit, probably you remember the name. So they asked for 53 terrorists to be released. They asked for $5 million, which is not that much. But then the most traumatic word, what they told the passengers, that if the 2 governments not accept what we asked, we gave them an ultimatum. At Thursday noon, 1st of July, we will start to kill you. Every hour, 2 passengers executed. And we'll start, they told the passengers, with the children. So now we are 46 almost years from that days. But try to think that you are in a plane and 2 days after someone said, maybe I'll kill you. For what reason? What is the right for terrorists to kill innocent people like us? Because political issue, they give a right to kill us? What is the right for people to bomb the Twin Towers? What is the right? Do we ask ourselves why there is a political issue in the world which gives to some political movement to kill innocent people? I couldn't understand why, in many cases, when I said it, people look at a terror attack as a car accident. It's part of life. Hopefully not us, but we try to drive the car more carefully. In 2 days, someone said, I kill you. Why?
Let's move from Entebbe to Israel. The prime minister at the time, Yitzhak Rabin, and his ministers and his cabinet had a policy not negotiating with the terrorists.
Yeah, but I would like to end something here.
Go ahead.
Because it's important to understand the situation. As I said, on Tuesday, everything changed before we go to Israel. And then at noon, they came with all the passport, and in 2 hours was the first step of the selection. And the word selection, I don't have to explain to us, to anyone here at that room, what it means selection. They separated the Jews from the non-Jews. On the big room, the original room, was 140 non-Jews, and in a small room was 100 and something Jews from Israel and from the diaspora.
They started off by going through the passports
Yes.
and called out all the Israeli citizens to go into the next room. How did they know who else was Jewish?
And then they select all the Jewish family name from the other nationality passport. So if it was Levi or Cohen, very easily to find who is Jew. So between the non-Jews was a few Jews because their family name wasn't very clear, it's a Jewish name. But I can say on one room and on another room. And I would like to add one more thing. Remember, between the hostages was many Holocaust survivors. For them to see German holding gun, they spoke German, all the memory awake. One of the Auschwitz survivors came to the German leader, showed his number on his arm, and told him, I survived Auschwitz and I arrived Israel, and all the year I educate my children that today there is other German than the Nazi. If I would be back to Israel, what do you want me to say to my children? And the German, at 76, laughed at him, hit him with his Kalashnikov on his head, and told him, today you are the Nazi in the world. I said that story because one reason. I couldn't understand what happened in Israel. I don't know anything here in California or in New York or Melbourne, but in Israel, so many Israelis called each other, you are Nazi. What you do, it's like the Nazi. You are preparing to be a Nazi. How easily Jews called each other Nazi. How that become just a nasty word and not more meaning. How that happened? Either anyone in that room believed that possible of one Jew to build a death camp? How come? We blame each other. You are Nazi. I take something which happened over there 76, and I hear now, and people use it like that.
Stupid ideology.
Yes.
So let's go to Israel. So Yitzhak Rabin,
As that spread out in the world, the Jewish world, sure, some of you here remember the moment when that news came out from Uganda, and the Jewish world shocked. The next day in the afternoon, French sent 2 Air France flights, and they took out from Entebbe the 140 non-Jews passengers, and the selection finished. 100 and something Jews left in Entebbe. They wrote a farewell letter and gave to the hostages who were released. Some of them gave their earring or rings. And Israeli government understood from that moment it's a question of Israel to take response on the situation. It's not anymore a question of the world, of France, whatever. It's a question of Israel to take response. And on Wednesday night, as you said, the government said to discuss what does it mean to take response, on what way. The first I would like to share with you was the word that Motagur said. Motagur was the chief of staff at that time of IDF. And quite surprised, he said, I am against military action. Usually we look at the army general that are pushing always for military activity. And he said, I am against military action. Because first, there is not enough information what happened over there in Entebbe. We don't know how big the Ugandan army force there. We don't know exactly how many terrorists there. We don't know if the hostages kept in the old terminal only. Maybe they divided, maybe they move out from the airport. We don't know anything. So I'm not think it is a right to send soldiers in such a situation. The other things, what he said, that a few officers brought me a plan how to release the hostages. And it looked to me that the plan is like a James Bond movie, he told the passengers, and it will end as the Americans felt in '62 when they tried to invade Cuba. And he said, I am against military action. Then Shimon Peres took the microphone. He was the defense minister at that time, and he said just opposite word. He said, we hear what happened in the Jewish world outside Israel, and we should take response on the situation and fight. Even we felt we should show the Jews around the world that one of the important reasons why Israel exists is never again Jews executed without defense of the country of Israel. So we should prepare ourselves for military action, he said. The last one was Yitzhak Rabin. He was a prime minister in the first term. And usually when Shimon Peres said one word, Yitzhak Rabin said the opposite, or depend who he said first. They always play, in a political game. And he said, quite strange for me, a very Jewish meaning word. He said, the most important is how to bring the hostages safely home. We are not asking something bigger than that. How do we bring the hostages safely home? And if there is no military plan, and if the chief of staff against military plan, the only way to move forward safely is to change the policy that we follow in many years, that Israel is not negotiate with terrorists by fight them. And I recommended to the minister to vote for opening negotiation with the terrorists. And early Thursday morning, the government voted in one voice for opening a negotiation. The terrorists delayed the ultimatum from Thursday noon till 4th of July noon, Sunday,
In order to negotiate.
to open the negotiation. They accept. In 12 hours, 6 o'clock p.m., I sat somewhere in Tel Aviv and get an order for preparing a military mission.
You knew it was to go to Entebbe?
Of course,
They told
our
you right.
mission was to be in the front of all the force who took part on the mission and to prepare how to fight with the terrorists in the old terminal where all the hostages are.
But when you were called to training, right away you knew where you were going.
Yes. No, we knew exactly from the first moment.
So what changed from when they made a decision to open negotiations with the terrorists until you got the phone call that you were going to Entebbe?
Two things, or maybe more, but at least two things. First, we got a lot of information about, it wasn't very clear, and I would like to put very short what information we got of what happened over there in Entebbe. One, we went to the Solen Bonet company headquarters in Tel Aviv, and we took the blueprint because Solen Bonet built the old terminal. So it gave us idea how they look like the building.
They built it when Israel had
A good
a good relationship with you guys.
with Uganda, yes. Second, on Friday morning, a Mossad agent took a small aircraft and flew over from Nairobi toward Entebbe. He should cross the Victoria Lake, and as he arrived close to Entebbe, he told the Ugandan there that he has problem with his plane and he must land. First they told him it's impossible, the airport is closed. But as he insisted that he couldn't go farther than Entebbe, they gave him a right to land in Entebbe. But as he arrived above the airport, he told them that he couldn't land because of a problem. First he will try to solve all the mechanic problem. And by that time he did a few circles around the airport, and he was the first one who landed in Entebbe. He took a lot of pictures. By the time he did the circle, he was the first one to talk with the Ugandan on the ground. But as he tried to get a permission to go to see the hostages, they stopped him and he flew back immediately to Nairobi. And then Israel sent at the same time Boeing 707, and they took the 3 cassettes and flew back immediately to Israel. So that was on the background of the operation, how we achieved some information.
Did they also speak with the hostages in France, in Paris, who arrived
On
back?
Thursday afternoon, Israel sent investigators, and they start to ask a few of the hostages who were released to Paris, and they sent important information during Thursday night and all Friday. The problem was that they left Uganda sometime Wednesday night, and many things would change from that moment when they was back to Paris. But at least something we got from them. It was difficult to decide how big the force should be, but at the end, you know.
While all this was going on, you were training.
I can't say and use the word training for the situation. We were mostly in our base was a preparation, logistics in idea how to surprise the terrorists. It took hours to build the idea how to surprise the terrorists. From our experience, we knew that the question who is shooting first, it's a key for succeed. Otherwise, the terrorists, the moment they see that we are around, they kill the hostages immediately. And it's happened, unfortunately. So we tried to think, how could we surprise? So it wasn't something that we can train in. It's a question of build the plan. On Friday, 6 o'clock, we came the idea that what we saw a few hours before, it's the only plan that could be rational. To go down to the terminal as Idi Amin convoy car. He came almost every day with blue Mercedes and 2 Land Rover cars. All the guard was on the back. And we thought maybe that is a good idea to come as Idi Amin, the same car, to be in these cars and go down. But the question was, how could we get Mercedes in Tel Aviv sometime late afternoon? It's not an easy way. It's not a military car. The Mossad told us that there is a garage where there is an old limousine there. And we sent 2 soldiers, and as they opened the gate, what they saw, old white limousine, Mercedes, standing on chalk, without wheels. The engine hardly worked, and it was 6 p.m. already. Remember, Friday. The next day we took off to Entebbe. 6 o'clock, that is the way that we prepare ourselves for the operation. So the garage, the mechanic told that might be one of my friends who has a shop can give you 4 wheels. So they drove to the friend of the mechanic and knocked on the door. And the kids opened the door and said the parents went to see a movie. Should wait. It was almost
Just
8
hang
o'clock.
around. Hang around
Yes.
for an hour or two.
And as the parents came from the movie, somehow, without telling why, the father accepted to go with the 2 soldiers and gave them 4 new wheels. But then he asked something which is everyone probably will ask, who paid for the wheel? Logical question. But they are soldiers from the special force. They said the Jews not touch on money on Shabbat.
They can take wheels, but they can't pay them. Okay, so they had a limousine. I assume they painted it.
Then they told, we will arrive on Sunday.
So, if you don't mind, let's move forward to Shabbat morning. Around what time did you take off?
We drove towards the Tel Aviv airport on 12. We loaded on the 4 Hercules on 12:30 till 1:30. 240 soldiers.
240
240
were all soldiers?
soldiers, pilot, air crew,
Medical
and
staff?
doctors, medical staff. 240 Israeli were on the plane, on the 4 Hercules. 8 cars were there. On the first Hercules, where I was, were 3 cars, the black limousine and 2 Land Rovers, 55 soldiers, no seat. The soldiers sat beside the car, some of them lied under the car. No windows, no air condition, very noisy flight. And I had something more than that. I was 23 years old at that day. Today I'm a bit more. And even though for 9 hours flight, all of us need toilet. We empty a Coca-Cola bottle and use it as a toilet because there is no toilet on the plane. That was a condition. We flew over to Entebbe, and the next 2 Hercules was more or less the same. The last one was almost empty. We left room for the hostages to take them out from Entebbe.
So you took off at what time?
1:30 p.m.
1:30 p.m. Shabbat afternoon.
We got a ride from the chief of rabbi of Israel that we can fly on Shabbat. Really, it's true.
Wow.
He wrote a letter that we can fly on Shabbat, and he informed early morning the rabbi here in
So
770.
hold on, we're getting to that.
Okay.
So your flight was flying to where?
To Sharm el-Sheikh.
To Sharm el-Sheikh. Shabbat afternoon, 1:30 p.m. Flying to Sharm el-Sheikh. You landed there at what time?
3 o'clock.
At 3 o'clock. An hour and a half flight.
Yes.
Before we get to what happened there, so far our story has been in Israel and in Entebbe.
Yes.
Should we move to New York?
Yes.
In New York, this is already Chabad history, the Rebbe received word from the chief rabbi of Israel that they were going to undertake this mission. Later, about a week later, after the whole mission became public and the world had celebrated, etc., the Rebbe spoke at length. I think on 2 or 3 separate occasions, the Rebbe spoke about this instance. And the Rebbe spoke very, very powerfully about the decision that was made, ultimately, by the Prime Minister and the Chief of Staff, etc., to fly to Uganda. I was going to interrupt you before when you used the word rational. But this was the most rational plan. I don't think it was very rational, I have all due respect. And with all the plans that there were, the Rebbe often would reference it as an occasion where the spiritual side of the Israelis and the spiritual side of the Jewish people overpowered our rational and our physical side. Because to fly to Entebbe and to undertake such an operation with such a small chance of success, and to put lives at risk, etc., is to put our hands directly in the hands of God. To this effect, on Shabbat morning or Shabbat afternoon, as Rami informed me, and I heard from others afterwards, at 1:30 p.m. in New York, the Rebbe would normally farbreng, the Rebbe would normally hold a farbrengen. Many hours earlier, because remember that when it was 1:30 p.m. in Israel, it was six hours, right? Yeah. 6 hours earlier in New York, the Rebbe was in the middle of davening. And the Hasidim noticed that in between everything that the Rebbe was davening, the Rebbe had a tehillim. The Rebbe was nobody knew why. Nobody knew about the operation. How many people knew about the operation in total? The whole world?
Very little number. You know, it was a big number.
240 soldiers.
Yes.
But then,
a few more.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the Hasidim noticed that the Rebbe was davening extra. We'll go back to New York soon.
Yes.
For now, let's go back to the airplanes with no toilets.
To be back to the tzitzit, you know, because he said,
yes,
as we were back, that
when you
soldiers, yes, we were back on the 4th, he said, the soldiers who landed in Entebbe and were back, they are Hasidim without tzitzit.
Okay, we'll get back to this. There were a lot of reactions from the Rebbe, and we'll talk all about them.
Yeah.
But for now, let's go back to the airplanes, the Hercules with no toilet. So you landed in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Yes.
We have to remember this was between 1967 and 1970, when they gave back the Sinai.
82.
It was 82.
We left.
So Israel was still in control of Sharm el-Sheikh. So you landed in Sharm el-Sheikh at 3 o'clock p.m. Refueled, or was it necessary?
First of all, we took off from Tel Aviv when the government didn't give us a permission to land in Entebbe. The only thing what they want to short the time in case they will give us a right to land.
Just in case.
Just in case. The second thing I would like to mention that it was a big debate between the minister, either to give a right to a military action or to keep on with the negotiation. Slowly, the negotiation became the cover of the real plan of the military.
You're saying in the beginning it was a real negotiation.
Yeah, that was the main role at the beginning.
As it
But
advanced,
Shabbat,
it became the...
it became a cover of the military.
Let's pause for a second.
Yes.
I want you to tell us about the commander of the operation, Yoni Netanyahu.
I met Yoni in 2 occasions. First, I met him during the 73 war. At that time, he was studying here in Boston, and as the war opened, it was the first time we got it, and it wasn't on a good size of each one of us. So some of them was too tight, and some of them was too big, and we look a bit funny. The other thing I would like to say that in the American movie, they paint us with the black. They show that we look like exactly Ugandan soldiers. It wasn't true. I was in a Polish face with Israeli gun and Ugandan uniform.
So tell us about what Yoni Netanyahu told you in Sharm el-Sheikh.
Then he collect all of us, and nothing happened.
Here we go.
Okay, and it's very important when the commander tells to the soldiers what we are going to do, so that everyone know exactly why we are on a mission. And he said three important things. Very short, very clear. First, he said to us, what will happen on the ground over there in Entebbe won't be of what we prepare to. But we are more clever, better soldiers, and we achieve to bring the hostages back home. Full stop. The second thing, what he said, the key, who is shooting first, is the key for succeed. So no one should stop if one next to him fall down by shooting or other reason. We should run as quick as possible into the hole to be the first who killed the terrorist. And the last, what he said, wasn't clear to me at all. He said it's a mutual responsibility of Jews to help each other.
Do you remember the Hebrew words he used?
אנחנו חייבים לעזור ליהודים שנמצאים בצרה.
I don't know if you're familiar with this, but in the Talmud, this is a very strong fundamental belief in Judaism. In Hebrew we say, Kol Yisrael arevim zeh lazeh, that all Jewish people are responsible one for another. And actually later, the Rebbe spoke about this, about the idea that even if we feel like, oh, we live in a democracy and we have freedom, and don't tell me what to do, and I can do whatever I want to do, that just like in Entebbe, there was a feeling of, we're all in this together. Right? That we're all in this together, and that, in the Rebbe's words, if we're all on one boat, just because you paid for your cabin, and you're in first class, and you're allowed to do whatever you want, doesn't mean you can drill a hole in the boat. So the Rebbe said similarly, we have to appreciate the same idea in spirituality. That we often think to ourselves, what is it my business if somebody else is not keeping Torah or mitzvot, is not putting up the tefillin, it doesn't have a kosher mezuzah. It's like drilling a hole in a boat that we're all in together. But more on this soon.
And in 76, to be honest with you, it wasn't any meaning. It was a word, but I was on the mission by telling to myself, I am there for bring the hostages back home safely. That's the word I use. Nothing with all the Jewish meaning. That came later, the connection to that meaning. Then in 3:30, we took off from Sharm el-Sheikh. The first Hercules was full up till the top, was very hot day, and as he ran on the runway, arrived almost to the end, and he couldn't take off. Just because at the end there is a rock and the water is 40 meters down, we found ourselves on the air. I mention that because there is always small things. Now we haven't got enough time, but I will mention a few that somehow, by some reason, we move to a good end. It could be so many catastrophes on the preparation. In such a short time of preparation, we haven't got time to think on all the difficulty and think maybe we can solve it. But other things happen, like I said now.
So you took off. How long is the flight from Sharm el-Sheikh to Entebbe?
The next 3 hours, we flew 30 meters above the sea level. Try to imagine what it means 30 meters above the sea level. The hero of the operation, no doubt by me, it's a pilot. 30 meters above the sea level. In every second, if they lost the connection, what happened? We could find ourselves on the water. And every hour, another pilot changed because the end frozen for 3 hours. Then we arrived to near Ethiopia. We got a message from the government, you can go to Entebbe. We took the face toward Entebbe, and was a mountain 5,000 meter high, and as we arrived to the top, a tropical storm opened. And for the next 2 hours, to where Entebbe were the most difficult hours on the flight. 2 hours, we flew on the storm. The plane ran from side to side easily. I thought to myself, we are going to crash on the ground of Entebbe. No doubt that the 4 Hercules, without any defense, crossing toward Entebbe. Then we arrived about Lake Victoria and everything stopped. And the last hour was the most comfortable flight.
I assume nobody slept.
Hardly we could.
So you're arriving in Entebbe. You've been up since Shabbat morning. And what time did you land?
At 11.1, 1 minute delay of what the Air Force prepared. Only 1 minute. In such a condition, it's a magic. How that could happen? The airport was full of light, even though we are afraid that in some way or another they realized that the Michiganer is on the way to Entebbe. We landed and the airport was full of light. They didn't recognize that we are on the ground. And as the Hercules stopped, the back door opened, and 33 soldiers on 3 cars went out into night in Africa.
You were one of those 33.
I was one on the Land Rover behind the limousine.
Behind the limousine. Yoni was where? In the front?
In the front of the limousine. He was
The first
sitting
man.
next to the driver.
Walk me through what is the job of an operations officer. That was your job, right?
Mostly to coordinate everything that the plan become working. To know that everyone know exactly what he should do, to know that the logistic arrive and on the right time, and that everything should work with the Air Force and other force. So I was involved in many aspects of the preparation of this mission, to be sure that the plan is right for what we planned, the number of soldiers and cars and everything. Sometimes they said, no, it's impossible, so I should be back and see how could we arrange other plan, and so on. And it was in a short time. It wasn't any mobile telephone, so it was very difficult and intense time.
And what was your job on the ground? Like every other soldier.
We divided to 6 teams. Each one team has a commander. I was commander of one of the team. Each team duty was to work independently. We should work all together, so we put a white head on our head, so we recognize each other. And then we arrived to the front of the terminal.
So
We stopped the car.
till the front of the terminal took how long? A minute? 2 minutes?
No, about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Or something. It was a beautiful drive.
And it was uneventful. Nobody, no action, nothing, quiet.
It was quiet, peaceful, beautiful sky with a lot of stars. I felt that
You're on
I'm
vacation.
in a dream, I'm in a vacation. It took me for some minutes to feel that it's not a real that I'm going to fight. I feel that I'm in a somewhere different world.
When did it become real for you?
On the last junction, when we drove, stood two Ugandan soldiers. And they signed by hand to stop. And Yoni decided to shoot and kill them. The first one shot by silent pistol, and the second one tried to escape, and the soldiers on the back Land Rover took his Kalashnikov and opened fire. The sound of the fire awoke me to understand that I am there for one reason, to bring safely the hostages. But immediately other thought covered that thought. A year before, terrorists caught 50 high school students in a northern city in Israel called Ma'alot. Our unit tried to save their life, and we felt, which till today we remember,
You were not here.
25, I wasn't there,
Right.
25 high school students killed by the terrorists. And it's not easy to be in a duty and then to see one by one 25 young people murdered. And I thought it's going to happen in Entebbe again, because the sound of the gun probably awakes the terrorist over there in the terminal, and the first things what they're going to do is to kill the hostages. That thought was with me as we drove the 250 meter, and as we stopped the car next to the terminal, it was quiet. Nobody awake, nobody opened fire, nothing. That was one of the keys that we succeeded, the surprise.
It's unbelievable. It's a similar miracle to just driving off a cliff, and somehow you was able to take off. So you arrived at the front of the terminal. Was anybody outside the terminal guarding?
No one.
Not Ugandan soldiers? And
Not Ugandan,
not terrorists?
not terrorists. No one from the hostages went out to look at that. From Thursday, the terrorists got a permission to be outside a bit. The children started to play on the front of the terminal, so they could be more free. They knew that there is a negotiation. They knew that there is a delay of the ultimatum. They went to sleep on the floor of the terminal. So now it's a question of either we succeed or not. It's a question of luck, of God. As we went out from the cars, my team duty was to stay outside to be sure there is no force who come and fight from the back to where the terminal. As we start to run, very heavy fire opened from the control tower, the old control tower. And Yoni Netanyahu was hit. He was the only one who shooted by the fire from the control tower, and he fell down. But as we practice in many cases, we run to where the terminal, the first soldiers crossed the main door and saw the two Germans prepared to shoot and kill them. It took 7 minutes only, 6, 7 minutes, nobody knows exactly, when 7 terrorists killed, 20 Ugandan killed, some of them outside. As we start to run, we saw Ugandan soldiers who tried to escape, mostly. 20 Ugandan soldiers killed. Unfortunately, 2 hostages who tried to escape from the crossing fire. One of our soldiers thought they are terrorists and killed them. One hostage is wounded seriously, and the next day he was dying in Nairobi, in Kenya. That took 7 minutes, 6 minutes, something like that, not long than that. And the fire was a bit slowed down, because all that minute was heavy fire from the control tower. We tried to stop that, but it was very difficult because the difference of the height, they could look down and easily could shoot and kill us. I came in the car and took Yoni Netanyahu to the medical plant. He arrived alive, I can say, but unconscious. And after some minutes, he was dying over there in a plane. The doctor couldn't save his life. We drove back to the terminal, and the other force which arrived with the Hercules 2 and 3, they stopped the fire from the control tower, and they sent one team to where the Ugandan Air Force and rocket the 11 MiGs. We were afraid that the MiG could follow us as we took off. 11 MiG blow up, and my last duty on the ground over there was to lead the hostages from the terminal to where the plane will wait to take them out from Entebbe.
What were they like, the hostages? What did they look like? What type of emotional state were they in? Do you remember that?
What I saw, people, I didn't recognize who is Jew, who is Israeli. The air crew and Michel Bacot, they were part of the hostages who left in Entebbe, and they work out. Some of them without shoes, some of them with night clothes, some of them holding personal luggage, mothers holding the babies on their hand. Immediately, I saw the picture of Jews walking out from the ghetto to where they train. Immediately it connects to me the same picture which was in many albums at my home. I saw Jews over there. And now again. We thought at the beginning to take them by car, but it was impossible. So we walk with the 105 hostages, some of them holding the body of the dead hostages, Israeli with gun walking beside them. I was on the front and I hear sound, Rami, you save live Jews. And it was the first time for me when the word Jews awake in a positive and deeply emotional meaning in my life. I thought that such a situation my parents couldn't get. All my family from both sides murdered, except one sister of my father. I thought, luckily Rami, that you are joined this operation, and in every second someone could open fire from the dark. But I felt lucky me that I took part in such an operation. I was so proud on my country that decided to send us for such a risky operation. And the last I thought, that is the Jew of saving life. taking risk. In a second, everything could change. But I'm on the ground, not myself, with two others, but everyone around the world with me at that moment. And it was, I can say, even it's difficult to say, it was a joyful moment. And second, as we arrived to the Hercules, about 600 meters, he waved to us with the full power, was hardy to count each one of them. We knew the number that should be there, 105, but always we missed one. Till one stood up and said, oh, my mother, she took yesterday to the hospital in Kampala. It was Dora Bloch's son. Dora Bloch was an American Jew, 73 years, who immigrated to Israel, and she was on a plane for a wedding of one of the family members in New York. And on Friday, she swallowed a fish bone and took over to Kampala, to the hospital there. On Sunday, as Idi Amin realized that we succeeded, told to his force to take it out from the hospital, and she was murdered by his force. Only 79 men arrived to Israel, and she has a funeral. So that was Idi Amin, and that was a situation where I was and connect in the first time on the ground in Entebbe to the meaning of being Jew, part of other force. And by not planning, not studying that, it just happened.
Very mundane question. While you were walking back to the Hercules, this must have been a long walk.
We thought to take the hostages by the two Land Rover, but as we told them, look, wait here, and we take you in interval, each time 10, 12, 20 or more jump on the Land Rover. 3 of them sat on the driver's seat. A few of them sat in the front, and we couldn't drive at all.
So you walked.
So we told them, look, sorry if you don't go out, and nobody. They were shocked. They couldn't talk, of course. So nobody listened that we told them, we are back. In such a situation, probably nobody believed to any word. They thought there is only chance to go out is to sit and wait.
The Ugandan soldiers were not there? They went on left?
Many of them, they escaped. And I've been in Uganda a few times. Now I plan other project with the Uganda, hopefully for the 50, it will come. But I talked to them and asked, and what they told me, and I just repeat what they told me. They said, why we should fight with you? What is the reason? We better save our life.
They mixed up.
Yes.
So you made it to the Hercules, you counted and counted and counted until you realized that one of the hostages was taken to the hospital, and then you took off.
52 minutes from the moment the first Hercules landed, the Hercules with the hostages took off toward Nairobi. 52 minutes only. All this story which we sit now here took 52 minutes, not long.
Just for context, you've been talking for longer than 52 minutes. So the actual story took shorter than the... So you took off, not directly to Tel Aviv.
No, we flew to Nairobi,
Nairobi.
Kenya. During the fight, we got a permission to refuel the plane in Nairobi because the original plan was to refuel on the ground in Entebbe, which should take about 40 minutes to each Hercules. So you can count how long we should be in the front on the black limousine and the two Land Rover. We changed our uniform from Army Air Base and we drove back to our base. We met our new commander, a friend of mine, and we get 24 hours free time to visit the family and to tell them that we are there on the mission. And as I arrived to the kibbutz and I opened the big door at the dining room, on the other side, by God, probably, my sister was there. And as she saw me, her face became white. And I asked her, Nira, what happened? Her name was Nira. What happened? And she couldn't talk. And then she asked me, are you alive? And I couldn't understand why. I said, what happened? She said, on the news they said one officer killed, but the parents stayed overseas, so we couldn't say the name. At that time, our parents was in Australia, in Melbourne. And she was quite sure that it is me who killed, and she couldn't handle it to see the ghost. So I went and called my father, and I told him, to my father, I told him in a very serious, I remember my voice, I'm okay, I'm alive, please don't tell that I took part. I felt it secret things that I took part on a mission, but everything is okay. Then when I visited, I realized, when I visited Melbourne, I realized it took 24 hours only when most of the community know that there is a secret which no one should talk about.
Very good.
All Israel, Chavarim.
That's how it works.
And then the next day was Yoni Netanyahu's funeral. And the next day, I took part on another mission preparation.
You were a regular soldier again.
Yes, nothing special.
Wow.
And I would like to say one word at the end, then question or you can ask. Shaul Mofaz, later he was the chief of staff, said once about the operation that Israel army did much and many more complicated operation, but none like Operation Yonatan. And I agree with him in many aspects about it. And the last, what I would like to say, as Rabbi Rivkin said, we wrote a book, all the officers and soldiers from the unit, and I gave it to the President of Israel, and I wrote on the back page, I flew to Entebbe as an Israeli Sabra officer in a special force, and I flew back from Entebbe as a Jew, but as I said, unfortunately, it took me 40 years to understand it. And why 40 years? Because in 2016, I was invited to Copenhagen, and in a long journey, I'm here together with you. To be together, to understand that this mission, it's part of our legacy. And I would like to say one more thing. I think in some aspect, this operation represents the change of our legacy, our biography, our history. from being victim in many steps in our history to be a free people that we take response on our life, not individually, but as a nation. Not to give that much focus of being victim. I think it represents very strong. And the other aspect, I think this mission represents the positive and good connection that we are. Doesn't matter if we live in Israel or live in Pasadena or other place, it's our country. And our country took response on our hostages. And we succeed. And it's a part of all of us, this succeed. To remember that being Jews, there is a good thing for ourselves and for the world. But living our life, nothing to change in my understanding, but to understand there is a good thing. It's not something that we have to hide. Thank you.
We are going to take some questions and answers. If you have some, please, if you have my number, you can text it to me. That's easiest. Like that, I can aggregate the ones that are asked by a few people. If not, you are also welcome to raise your hand and we'll take your question independently. But before we do so, let me start off by asking you one question as a rabbi.
Rabbi to rabbi.
Rabbi to rabbi, exactly. What do you think? Looking back, do you see the hand of God in your mission?
I'm afraid to say so directly, hand of God. So I use this word. I think it's a miracle how that operation succeeded. So if God exists on each one of us as a meaning, it's the end of God. And if we don't use the term God in our life, so I think without having the miracle stone on our pocket, it would be different. It's a lucky thing what happened. In 1980, the American force prepared for months an operation for rescue the hostages in Tehran embassy. And they failed, not because bad preparation, not because we are better than the American, not at all. They are in many aspects better than us, just because two things, bad luck and bad weather. And it could happen to us. And I think in many cases, if I look back on that operation, without God or without the good luck, it could be a catastrophe.
Okay. First question came in. I think it's usually your most common question. Have you watched any of the movies? And I'll add to it. The question was just, have you watched any of the movies? I think there's 3 to date.
5.
5?
Came to this.
Okay. So let me just add to that. If you've watched any of the movies, and I assume you have, did they consult you or any other soldiers in the process? And how accurate is it?
Yes, the council.
And how accurate is it? How correct is it?
Look, all of them, they use the same frame. You know, terrorists hold hostages and the army release them. So that's the story. But each one puts the story in a different view. And I would like to take two from the first one and the last one. The first one came to the market after 3 months. Only 3 months after. Why? The government, the Labour Party, knew the next year supposed to be election. The polls is very difficult for them. So now they have a golden head. So they create a patriotic movie for the Israelis mostly. It's a Menachem Golan movie. Could you believe that soldiers like me sat around Yoni Netanyahu's body and sang what it was the sang, I always forgot. Hine ma tov u'manai. It's impossible. we won't at the same plan, but to create, the atmosphere can push
the elections.
To the election to the right direction. If someone remember in 77 election was the first time when the Labour Party got a mapach. So that was the first movie influenced very strong by the Russian producer idea. The movie supports the government. The last one, which came to the market, came on 2017. So it's a beautiful market, a beautiful movie, but in my eyes, what I saw, there is one difficulty thing which the world changed. They show how honest they are, the terrorists. They bring water to the old lady there. They put plaster on a young Israeli who were hit by terrorists. They talk between themselves about life at home. Very humanitarian view. There are people, and then in the middle of the night, terrorists, me, landed in Entebbe and killed them, these people. I say to myself, the West is not in situation to understand that we should separate the political view and terror. Everyone can hold political view on any situation, but that not give a right to anyone to kill us. And we shouldn't bring the story like that. Oh, it's a nice, now it's a time when we support the Palestinians, so we can change it, use this story for change the atmosphere around the conflict. The conflict, it's okay, and people can support that side on another side. But what is the right to kill us as an innocent, as a civilian? And that's what happened in Entebbe, nothing else.
Next question.
Yes, he wants to ask.
Hold on.
At 2017.
Yeah, just 1 second, because there's a few questions that came in. If you'd like to text it, that's fine. If not, let me just get to these, and we'll have you ask in person. One question comes from Matt Shelby, which says, I'm a few months younger than the mission. He says, when I am an old man, he says, when I'm 99, and historians start with the 100th anniversary to Entebbe.
Yes.
Just in case you're not around.
Yes.
What should the future know or remember from the raid?
Very hard to answer. I should wait till I reach there. I don't know, actually, I think in some aspect it will be part of our history. It's another story which build our legacy, our history, our biography as a nation. people remind to ourselves that such a things happen for different reasons, and for, hopefully, I can say, I'm not sure if it will be, but hopefully it be used for remind us what is mean to be a Jew, what is mean to be one nation, what is in common between all of us. Doesn't matter what we think, might be we're different color, might be different history, different family, different background, but still there is something in common. Hopefully this story used for that.
Reminds us of that. One more question. In 1972, somebody says, I arrived in Israel the night of the Lod airport massacre. If my math is correct, this was before you joined the army.
Yes.
But did this event affect you in any way before your service?
It was on July 72, the Munich massacre. It's always was around what could happen if we not be careful on any step ahead. We should be careful. Very easily, people can look at us, the 7 million Jews in Israel, the 15 Jews in the world, and we should remember, we need the prayer, we need the gun, and we need the togetherness.
Does anyone ask a question? Rob, you had a question?
In 2017 at the JLA conference, they showed a really good movie about Yoni called Yoni.
Yes.
Okay. Danny?
Yeah, I remember. I saw that movie.
Thank you very much, Yashikar. That was an incredible, inspiring story. You asked why we were here. It's to witness living history. So you are our connection with living history. So that's why we're here. And in terms of question, I mean, it sounded like an incredible mission to have 4 noisy Hercules planes coming in, 16 engines into as a foreign power into a hostile nation. It's incredible that the Uganda, there was no. How were you prepared for the foreign force from the Ugandan armies? Was that who was firing from the control tower? Was that the terrorists or the Ugandan army? And also, when you moved into a dark building at 11 p.m., how did you even know who was who? It's just incredible.
First, practically we put a white hat. And unfortunately, we were in such a situation in Israel, quite a few. So you know how to work in a small unit and you create a language, I can say, to understand where everyone could be. So it wasn't something at the first time. So it was 4,000 kilometers, but some of the success that we were a small unit which understand each other without too much talk. And it's a very important that everyone know exactly what to do, how to help, how to move to that corner or to that corner. So that helped a lot and is another part of succeeding.
Silva?
When you enter Ugandan airspace or East Africa more generally, I'm not sure if you have windows or if you can see outside. Also, I guess it's probably quite dark out. Did you feel any sort of emotional shift as you entered this sort of, I would imagine it seems sort of alien, especially if you had never been to East Africa. Did you notice that something was a bit off, like different about the area, and did you, when you landed, did that at all integrate with your disposition or your posture? I know you mentioned that it felt dreamlike in some sense. If you don't mind me asking.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
So the question is, it's Africa. It's a very different climate. It might have looked different and felt different. Did that play a role in the emotional?
No, not really. We were there for 1 hour, and then we were back.
When was the next time you were in Africa?
The next time was in 2001. We were invited by Ugandan army and government, and we were the tour over there, and of course the debate what happened. Everyone remembers.
Everybody remembers it differently. So you went to the airport?
Oh yeah,
Oh, wow.
and then in 2016.
Did you recognize it?
Oh, very much.
You did? Even though you were over there for 52 minutes? It's stuck in your head. Shimon.
I'd like to thank you. Apart from what you did, which makes me very proud to meet you, who you are, how you present your humanity, doesn't have to be behind anything except your love of humanity and whatever Hashem is that we can't understand, that somehow you got through it and you got us through it. And I'm deeply indebted to you and to all of your people for having the courage to do what's right. You know, to fight fear, to fight people getting angry at each other and trying more to understand we're all human and we should treat ourselves human, no matter what the political situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Here. Any other questions before we wrap up? We'll take one more. Anybody? Roy Benson.
Flying under the radar at 30 meters. Was that also on the way back? Were you threatened by enemies on the way back with possible?
No.
Did you have to go under the radar?
You flew right ahead?
Well?
Partly, as we crossed Addis Ababa and the BBC announced, we are afraid because you should remember, most of the hours we were on the air without any guard. So we went down on the Red Sea on the way back to Sharm el-Sheikh, but about an hour and a half before we arrived, the jet flight plane guarded us.
Right. Rami, on behalf of everybody in the room, and I think on behalf of Klal Yisrael, thank you.